Welcome to Sleepy Science. Tonight, we go into a place few really notice. A jungle that moves quietly on its own, where the air holds stories you cannot see, where trees reach for sunlight but never speak, where animals appear only when they want. This jungle has secrets older than cities, secrets that unfold slowly, almost invisible. Tonight, you will hear them. Relax, listen, let your mind follow. If you want to discover the quiet mysteries of the jungle, subscribe to Sleepy Science and step inside with me. The jungle does not announce itself. You do not see it from far away, and it does not wave to you when you arrive. You step closer, and suddenly the edges of the world start to blur. Paths that once seemed clear in the distance are gone, swallowed by leaves and roots. Stones are hidden beneath moss, and the earth beneath your feet is softer than you expect. It feels alive, as if it moves slightly when you pause. The closer you get, the more you notice that nothing here obeys your rules. Your maps, your plans, the order you carry inside you, they all stop working. You have entered a place that has been creating its own rules for thousands of years. The ground is not level. One step is safe. The next sinks slightly or tilts under your weight. Roots twist across every path like ropes, some strong, some thin and sharp. Rainwater collects in small pools that were invisible a moment ago. There is no straight line. Even if you try to follow a path, it seems to curve in ways that make you question if you are going forward or looping back. The jungle grows in the gaps between certainty. It thrives where predictability fails. That is why it exists where humans rarely stay. We like order. The jungle does not. As you move deeper, the trees grow taller and closer together. Their trunks are wide and gnarled, covered in moss, lichen, and tiny plants that cling like they have never learned to let go. Some trees rise straight, piercing the air, but many lean, twist, or curve, and their branches twist around each other like fingers entwined in a secret handshake. Sunlight reaches the ground in patches, small circles of gold that shift constantly as the wind moves the canopy. You notice how the light feels alive, moving slowly, guiding you without words. There is no hurry here. The jungle does not care how long you take. The soil beneath your feet is not the soil you know. It is a mixture of mud, leaves, broken twigs, and something softer that seems almost like velvet but is wet and earthy at the same time. In some places, it gives way slightly under pressure. Roots stretch under the surface, creating invisible patterns that hold the ground together. Small creatures burrow beneath the top layer, making tunnels that you cannot see. Every step is both familiar and uncertain. Every touch of the earth reminds you that you are not in control. The wind here is different. It is not the wind that pushes or rattles windows. It is quieter. It moves through the leaves, carrying the smell of wet earth, growing plants, and distant flowers. You can hear it not as a roar, but as a soft sigh that shifts with every tree it touches. Sometimes it brushes your face lightly, and you feel the movement of the jungle itself, almost like it is breathing around you. You realize you are no longer just walking through a place. You are stepping into a system far older and far larger than you can measure. Rain falls in patterns that feel unpredictable. One moment, the sun shines. A few minutes later, small drops begin to fall, misting your skin. You can hear them hitting leaves above, dripping down in irregular rhythms. It is not a storm. It is the jungle practicing its own music, a rhythm that has nothing to do with human clocks. Some puddles swell and trickle, forming small streams that follow paths you cannot trace. The water moves slowly, but it is always moving, always reshaping the ground it touches. It reminds you that nothing here is fixed, nothing here obeys your expectations. The jungle seems quiet when you first arrive, but it is not still. There is movement everywhere if you look closely. A vine sways in a way that looks intentional, though it is not. Leaves shift to catch sunlight. Roots push slowly through soil. Tiny insects crawl across bark or soil, and even from a distance you feel them all working, all moving, even if you cannot see most of them. Every living thing here is part of a pattern you cannot fully grasp. You begin to understand that control is an illusion. The jungle does not ask for your understanding, and it does not need your presence to continue. You step over fallen branches and notice how some have been there for a long time, covered in moss and partially decayed, while others are fresh, snapped recently by wind or weight. Life and death exist side by side without judgment. The jungle does not mourn and it does not celebrate. It simply continues. You feel the same way as you move deeper, less like a visitor and more like a part of a process that has existed for centuries. Time here feels different, not slow or fast, but something you cannot name. Each step changes slightly, as if the ground is reminding you that nothing remains constant. Occasionally, you hear a sound that makes you pause. A branch cracking, a distant splash of water, a rustle in the underbrush. You look toward it expecting a creature, but there is nothing. Or maybe there is, but it does not want to be seen. In the jungle, movement is quiet. Life is careful. Everything that exists knows how to avoid attention when it wants. Even the trees, rooted in place, seem to shift their weight subtly to create space or block passage. You are learning the rules of a world that has no rules for you. The further you go, the more you notice the edges of the world fading. The path behind you seems to disappear, swallowed by leaves and moss. You try to remember how you arrived, but each step forward makes memory slippery. You are entering a place where human ideas of control, paths, maps, order, mean almost nothing. The jungle does not need your direction. It does not need your understanding. And yet it invites you in a strange way, by letting you exist among it without interference. Even small details hold secrets. Tiny mushrooms cluster on damp soil, some so small you almost miss them. Lichen colors change depending on moisture. Fallen leaves curl differently depending on sunlight. The jungle records and transforms itself continuously, but you cannot see the whole picture. You realize that being here is less about watching and more about noticing. Every sound, every movement, every shift in light carries meaning that is hidden, layered, and mysterious. You start to understand that the jungle's power is not in its size, or in its creatures, or even in its plants. Its power is in its quiet refusal to be fully known or controlled. Stepping further in, you notice that even the air has weight. It feels thick with moisture and movement you cannot see. Each breath fills your lungs differently than the air outside. Your own steps feel softer, almost as if the jungle is absorbing your weight. The world outside, with its straight lines and fixed rules, begins to feel distant. You notice that even your thoughts slow down as you walk. Control is slipping from your mind, and with it comes a strange calm. You are part of the jungle now, only slightly, only temporarily, but enough to feel its quiet authority. You realize that the jungle is teaching you something without saying a word. It does not lecture or instruct. It does not warn or praise. It simply exists in ways that defy your expectations. Every step, every pause, every glance around you reinforces that control is not real here. You are a visitor in a system far older and wiser than anything you carry. The trees, the soil, the wind, the water, the unseen creatures, they all operate on a scale and a pattern that humans cannot force or change. And yet, by simply being here, you are learning how to let go. And so you continue deeper, noticing more and more, realizing that the jungle will not slow for you and you cannot rush it. You are moving through a place that has survived countless storms, countless changes, and countless intrusions, yet it remains. Paths may appear and disappear. Light may shift and vanish. Water may trickle or pool or flow. Yet the jungle continues, steady and patient, reminding you that control is an illusion, that order is human, and that to exist here, you must let go of both. The air in the jungle feels different immediately. You notice it as soon as you step a little deeper, even before the trees close in. It is thick, but not heavy, like a soft blanket pressed lightly against your skin. Every breath carries moisture, but also something more. You can smell the earth, the leaves, the wet bark, and something faint that you cannot name. It is a smell that seems alive, moving slightly as you inhale. Your lungs fill differently here. Each breath reminds you that this is not the air you know. This air belongs to the jungle. Humidity is everywhere. It clings to your hair and clothes, seeps under your sleeves, and settles on your skin like a whisper. You feel it on your neck, your arms, and your hands as they brush past leaves. Sometimes it cools, sometimes it warms, depending on the shade and how the wind moves. The temperature does not change suddenly, but it is always present, like a quiet pressure that shapes your awareness. Even standing still, you can feel it adjusting to your presence, as if the jungle notices without needing to see you. You take another breath and notice tiny particles floating in the air. Dust from the soil, bits of pollen, microscopic spores from fungi, and even fine sand carried from somewhere far away. They hang suspended, almost invisible, caught in the light that filters through the canopy. The sun sometimes strikes them, and they sparkle briefly, like a secret the jungle is letting you see for a moment. You realize that these small things are everywhere, forming patterns you cannot predict, and yet the jungle thrives around them. Sometimes the wind moves through the leaves and carries scents in waves. You catch the smell of wet moss, the sharp sweetness of a flowering tree, the dampness of fallen leaves, and the faint, almost imperceptible smell of fruit or nuts hidden high above. You start noticing how your body reacts before your mind can name what it smells. Your heart slows slightly. Your senses sharpen in ways that feel natural, not forced. The jungle seems to breathe with you, or perhaps it is you who begins to breathe with the jungle. Even small movements in the air feel meaningful. A leaf shifts slightly above your head, and you sense it before you see it. The humidity and scent seem to carry the presence of every tree, every vine, every hidden plant. It is a subtle language, one you did not learn but begin to understand. Each inhalation draws more than air. It draws the invisible life of the jungle into you. Your lungs feel full but not tight. Your chest rises gently. You are aware that you are part of the environment now, just for a moment, just enough to notice. The jungle has its own rhythm of breathing. Rain falls sometimes, first as tiny droplets that hang in the air before landing, then as heavier showers that you can hear through the canopy. The air changes with every movement, every splash, every drop that touches a leaf. When the rain stops, the air remains thick and alive. Even after the water has passed, the smell of wet earth lingers. It is as if the jungle stores each moment of rain inside itself and releases it slowly, letting you feel its presence long after it is gone. You notice how this air touches every part of you differently. The back of your neck feels cooler. Your arms feel warmer as you brush past humid leaves. Tiny droplets cling to your hair, your eyelashes, and the skin of your hands. You start to move slowly, not because you have to, but because the jungle seems to ask it of you. Each step changes the way the air flows around you. Each step releases new scents from the ground and the leaves above. Even when you pause, the air continues to shift, touching you from every direction. Sometimes the jungle surprises you with a sudden scent, sharp and unexpected. The smell of flowers blooming unseen, or the earthy richness of soil freshly disturbed by some creature. It comes and goes quickly, leaving you alert and curious for the next moment. You realize that the air itself carries stories. Not stories you can read, but stories you feel. Stories of life, of growth, of decay, and of the constant movement that is invisible yet undeniable. As you breathe, you feel a connection to the jungle that is hard to explain. It is not a thought, not a feeling in the usual sense. It is a sense of being part of a larger process. Every inhalation brings the air and all it carries inside you. Every exhalation releases your own presence back into the jungle. You begin to notice subtle changes in your own body. Your heartbeat slows. Your muscles relax. Your thoughts become quieter, almost as if they are listening to the rhythm of the jungle rather than controlling it. The light above you changes as the sun moves or the canopy shifts slightly. Each change alters how the air feels. You sense temperature gradients, faint currents moving between tree trunks, subtle shifts that you cannot see. These shifts guide you without any words. You realize that the jungle has its own system of signs and patterns. You do not need to understand it fully. You only need to notice. Each breath, each small observation, slowly teaches you how to move through this space without disturbing it. There are moments when the air seems to hold still, yet you know it is not still at all. Tiny insects move through it, spores and pollen continue to float, unseen animals stir nearby. You feel the jungle in every part of your body at once. It is as if you are walking inside a living mist, a fog made not only of water but of movement, presence, and life. You begin to sense patterns in how the air behaves. Patterns that are not visible, but you feel them in your chest, your lungs, your skin. Sometimes you close your eyes and take a long breath. The air fills you completely. You feel it brush past every surface, through every small opening in your skin. The jungle seems to speak in this way, silently, without sound. It reminds you that you are part of something much larger than yourself. Each inhalation connects you to the ground, to the roots, to the unseen creatures above and below. You are moving in unison with something older than memory. You realize that stepping through the jungle is more than walking. Every breath you take becomes a conversation with the world around you. The humidity, the particles, the scents, and the subtle currents in the air are all part of a language you did not know, but are slowly learning. You are noticing things you never noticed before. Your lungs adjust, your heart slows, and you become aware that control is not required here. To be present is enough. As you move forward, the air seems to follow and surround you, carrying all the tiny, hidden pieces of the jungle along with it. Each step releases more scents from the soil, from leaves, from branches above. You feel as if the jungle is folding around you, including you without asking. The subtle pressure of humidity, the smells, the weight of the invisible life around you, they all teach patience. They teach quiet awareness. They teach that being part of this world is about receiving more than acting. And with every inhalation, every subtle movement of air on your skin, every tiny particle floating past your face, you understand a truth the jungle has always known. It does not need attention to exist. It does not need witnesses to continue. It is alive in ways you cannot fully measure, and by simply breathing it in, you are sharing a small part of its endless presence. The jungle fills you quietly, completely, without a sound, without a rush. As you step deeper into the jungle, your attention begins to move downward, toward the ground beneath your feet. At first, it seems ordinary: leaves, soil, fallen branches. But soon you notice patterns that are not random. Roots twist and turn, overlapping one another in ways that seem impossible. Some roots are thick and strong, anchoring the huge trees above. Others are thin, almost invisible, weaving across the soil like tiny threads of a secret web. You realize that the ground itself is alive in ways that you cannot see from the surface. Beneath the top layer of soil, tiny networks stretch in every direction. Fungi spread like silent messengers, connecting roots of different trees. They carry nutrients, chemical signals, and even warnings when a tree is sick or under attack. You cannot see these signals, but you can feel their presence, as if the soil itself knows more than any single creature in the jungle. It is a hidden conversation that has been going on for centuries, unnoticed by humans who pass by. You watch a patch of leaves and notice something curious. One tree seems to lean slightly toward another, its leaves brushing as if in greeting. It is not a coincidence. The trees communicate in ways that take decades for humans to understand. They share resources. They warn each other. They adjust their growth to benefit the larger group, not themselves alone. The jungle does not have leaders, yet it has a structure that is far more complex than any you have ever known. Tiny insects crawl along the roots, adding their own patterns to the network. Some insects create small tunnels that aerate the soil. Others carry spores from one fungus to another. You notice how every movement, no matter how small, fits into the invisible map below the surface. The jungle is organized, but in a way that feels alive and breathing, not controlled. You are beginning to sense that intelligence here is not in one place. It is everywhere, moving through roots, fungi, and tiny creatures, as if the ground itself is aware. As you walk, your feet press lightly into the soil, sending vibrations through the roots. You imagine that the jungle feels these vibrations, and perhaps it reacts in ways you cannot see. Every step you take becomes part of the hidden rhythm. Nothing here is isolated. Even the leaves that fall near your feet are caught in networks of fungi and decomposers, which slowly return them to the soil. Life and death are linked in ways that are invisible but undeniable. You notice a fallen branch nearby. It is covered in moss and fungi, and tiny insects move across it, exploring, feeding, and carrying bits of matter elsewhere. You realize that this branch, once part of a living tree, has become a hub of connection. Even in death, it contributes to the communication and support of the jungle. Everything in this place has a role, a function that does not need attention, praise, or understanding. The jungle simply works. Sometimes you stop and crouch to observe more closely. Small mushrooms cluster in patterns along the roots. They seem fragile and soft, yet they are powerful conveyors of life. They release chemicals into the soil, signaling to nearby plants. You think about how tiny and quiet these processes are, yet how vital they remain. The jungle thrives not because of large, obvious actions, but because of countless small, invisible acts that sustain the entire ecosystem. You take a deep breath and notice the air at ground level. It is cooler here, heavier with moisture, and full of the scent of soil and growth. You can almost feel the chemical signals that move through the roots and fungi. It is invisible but present. You imagine the jungle talking to itself in a language without words, a language of movement, scent, and slow, deliberate changes. You feel privileged to sense a fraction of it, even if your mind cannot fully understand. The more you watch, the more you see that nothing in the jungle acts alone. Trees adjust their growth to avoid shading one another completely. Roots from different species sometimes intertwine, sharing space and nutrients. Fungi connect them all. Even fallen leaves contribute to the network, decomposing and feeding microbes that feed plants. It is a system with no center, no single authority, yet everything functions together. You realize that the jungle behaves like a shared awareness, one that exists beyond your ability to measure or control. You notice tiny ants moving along a route. They follow paths that seem random, yet each path leads somewhere essential. Some ants are carrying food, others spores. You see how their paths intersect with the fungi, with small holes in the soil, with fallen leaves. Each ant moves independently, yet collectively they contribute to the hidden order. The jungle has taught patience in the quietest way. It shows that connection does not need force. Coordination can happen without rules that humans recognize. As you continue walking, you notice that even the shadows feel connected. Light filters through the canopy, creating shifting patterns on the ground. Each patch of sun touches leaves, moss, and roots, allowing some plants to grow faster in certain spots. Where light reaches, the chemical networks respond. Nutrients are moved to areas of need. You feel the jungle as a living system, constantly sensing and adjusting, but never in a way that demands attention. It works because it can, not because it must. You begin to feel small in a different way than you did before. Not overwhelmed, but integrated into something vast that has existed long before you. Every root, every fungus, every small insect contributes to a network of life that is older than human memory. It moves, communicates, and reacts without a central command. You realize that your own presence is temporary, but part of the jungle's processes continues whether you are here or not. There is no leader, no boss, no single mind. Everything works together in ways that are quiet and efficient. You pause near a cluster of roots and notice how the soil has subtle changes in color and texture. Darker areas are richer in nutrients, lighter areas less so. The fungi weave through both, carrying resources where they are needed. You imagine the jungle thinking, not in words, but in chemical signals and slow, invisible movements. It is a different kind of intelligence, one that humans rarely recognize. It is distributed, patient, and shared. Sometimes, a faint rustle from above reminds you that the canopy and the ground are connected. Roots communicate with trees, which communicate with vines, which communicate with the air. Even rain, when it falls, carries signals back into the soil, and nutrients move in response. The jungle is alive in ways that are invisible, but you feel them everywhere you look. You are moving through a consciousness that is spread across millions of living parts, all of which are silent yet aware. You continue walking and notice small breaks in the ground where life is thriving in hidden ways. Tiny seedlings push through moss, fungi send out threads to connect them, and insects move silently, carrying nutrients. You realize that connection is everywhere, but it is subtle. Nothing here shouts its importance. The jungle does not need recognition. Its shared awareness simply exists. Every movement, every chemical signal, every tiny action contributes to a greater whole that continues endlessly. You step lightly, careful not to disturb the delicate network beneath your feet. Every root, every patch of soil, every cluster of fungi is part of a vast system that has no central mind, but functions with remarkable precision. You feel a strange peace knowing that this intelligence does not judge, does not demand, and does not notice you in the way humans do. You are allowed to witness it quietly, and in doing so, you become a small part of it. Even as the light shifts above and the air grows heavier with humidity, the network remains constant. Roots communicate. Fungi carry messages. Microbes adjust to changes. The jungle continues, aware of itself in ways humans cannot see. You feel the weight and rhythm of this life beneath your feet. It teaches you, slowly, that connection does not need direction. Order can exist without control. Intelligence does not require a single mind. The jungle moves and grows together, quietly, endlessly, without a name or a face. As you walk further, the light begins to change. It is no longer the bright, even sunlight of open spaces. The jungle reshapes it, breaking it into thin, golden threads that filter through the canopy. Shadows stretch in long, uncertain patterns. Some parts of the ground are almost dark, while others are touched by sudden, soft beams of sunlight. You notice how your eyes adjust slowly, searching for shapes and movement in the patches of shadow. The light here feels deliberate, as if it has been carefully placed, though you know no one arranged it. The canopy above is thick. Trees grow in layers, each level catching light in different ways. The tallest trees reach for what sunlight is available, their leaves forming a roof that blocks much of the sun from reaching lower plants. But below, other trees and plants have adapted to survive in almost permanent shadow. Their leaves are thinner, broader, darker, capturing every bit of light that slips through the cracks above. Some plants even grow in angles that seem strange to human eyes, bending and twisting to catch the smallest beams. Every shape has a reason, even if it is invisible to you. You notice how the jungle does not allow waste. Light is precious here, and every plant uses it fully. No leaf stretches in vain. No branch grows where it cannot survive. You realize that the jungle teaches restraint. Growth is not random. Success is measured not by how tall a tree becomes, but by how well it uses the resources it is given. A plant that grows too quickly or in the wrong place may not last. Those that survive do so because they work within the limits set by the canopy, the soil, and the surrounding life. Looking around, you see shadows moving slowly. Leaves sway, branches bend, and sunlight shifts as clouds pass overhead. Each change in light alters the patterns on the ground, highlighting some plants while leaving others in darkness. You notice how some small ferns react, turning their leaves slightly toward the sun. Even the tiniest adjustments have meaning. Every movement, every shift, is part of a delicate balance that has been perfected over centuries. The jungle thrives not by taking more than it can hold, but by using exactly what is available. You pause to watch a small tree growing under the shade of a massive trunk. Its leaves are dark and broad, reaching upward cautiously. It does not try to overtake the space above it. Instead, it grows where it can, stretching slowly and deliberately toward the smallest beams of light. You feel a quiet lesson in this. Sometimes survival is not about taking what you want. It is about recognizing what you can sustain and growing within it. The jungle is patient. It rewards careful, measured growth, not reckless ambition. Sunlight changes constantly here. One moment, a patch of light strikes the moss on the forest floor, turning it a vivid green. A few minutes later, the sun moves, the leaves shift, and the moss returns to a muted shade. You notice how this rhythm is invisible, yet it shapes every living thing below. Even the smallest plants respond. Seeds buried in the soil seem to sense the timing of these light shifts. Growth, waiting, adjustment, they all happen quietly without noise or urgency. The jungle does not rush, yet it accomplishes everything it needs to. Looking upward, you see vines wrapping around trees. Some climb quickly to reach the sun, while others wait, resting on branches until they find a clear path. There is no waste of energy. No effort is made unless it can lead to results. You realize that every plant, from the smallest moss to the tallest tree, knows its boundaries. They have adapted over centuries to survive under conditions humans rarely understand. Constraint has become their stability. Every limitation is a rule that ensures life continues. You notice a patch of ferns growing beneath a thick tree. Their leaves are large, capturing every hint of sunlight. Around them, tiny seedlings wait patiently in shadow. They will grow when light becomes available, and until then, they conserve their energy. The jungle operates in cycles that you cannot fully see. Some plants grow fast when light is abundant. Others wait, almost invisible, until conditions are perfect. Every life form follows these rules silently, without protest. As you step carefully over roots and fallen leaves, you realize that the light teaches patience as much as it teaches survival. A beam strikes a small sapling just long enough to warm its leaves. It leans into it slowly, as if it knows the sun will return in a few hours. The jungle does not demand immediate results. Success comes from observing limits, waiting, and using what is given. You feel a calm settle in your chest as you watch this silent lesson unfold. Even the canopy itself is alive with subtle adjustments. Branches bend slightly to allow sunlight to pass to the plants below. Leaves shift with the wind, creating moving patterns of shade and brightness. You notice how the jungle conserves light, distributing it where it is needed most. No plant grows without consideration of those around it. Growth is measured, precise, and purposeful. Every movement, though small, is part of a larger, invisible system. You notice that some leaves are thin and delicate, while others are thick and waxy. Each type captures light differently. Some absorb it fully, some reflect it gently to nearby plants. Even decay contributes. Fallen leaves form a layer on the soil, holding nutrients that help the next generation grow. The jungle recycles everything. It never overreaches, never wastes. Everything has a purpose, even in shadow or decay. The patterns of light also affect the creatures here. Small insects move along branches only when the sun highlights their path. Birds and animals use patches of light for warmth or camouflage. You notice a small frog blending into moss lit by a thin beam of sunlight. It does not leap until the light is right. Every action is guided by what is available, never by what is desired. The jungle teaches careful timing, patience, and awareness of limits. Even when the canopy shifts and sunlight changes suddenly, the jungle absorbs it without disruption. Plants bend slightly, vines adjust, moss stretches. Growth continues within the boundaries set by the world around them. You begin to understand that light is more than illumination here. It is a guide, a teacher, a measure of possibility. You notice how every living thing responds, not with struggle but with quiet understanding. As you continue walking, you notice tiny beams falling on the forest floor, highlighting a single flower or leaf. The rest of the area remains in shadow, yet nothing suffers. Growth waits. Energy is conserved. The jungle has taught a rhythm that balances survival with patience. It is a rhythm that humans rarely see because we move too fast, demand too much, and ignore the small limits that make life possible. Here, life thrives precisely because it respects what it cannot take. You pause again and look around. Shadows shift. Light changes. Leaves sway gently. Every living thing adjusts imperceptibly, responding to the smallest hint of illumination. Nothing grows recklessly. Nothing wastes energy. Everything operates within boundaries. The jungle has existed for millennia, not because it overreached, but because it used exactly what was available. Constraint has become a quiet strength. You feel a subtle sense of calm as you watch it, a sense that life can continue beautifully when it works within limits. As you move deeper into the jungle, your eyes begin to notice less. The light is soft and shifting, shadows stretch across every path, and it is easy to lose track of direction. But your ears begin to work in ways you never expected. Sound becomes your guide. The faint tap of insects on leaves, the rustle of small creatures through moss, even the soft plop of water falling into hidden pools, all of it maps the world around you. You realize that your body is starting to understand space in a way your mind does not yet fully grasp. Insects seem to move with purpose, but in patterns you cannot see clearly. Their tiny wings beat in rhythms that mark the edges of the areas they occupy. Even without looking, you can sense how far apart their colonies are, and where one patch of life ends and another begins. The jungle is using sound to carve out its own invisible map, and you are learning to follow it. Your steps become quieter, your body more aware of vibrations beneath your feet. The world no longer feels like it has hard edges. Bird calls echo in the canopy not as warnings but as signals. Some are faint, barely above a whisper. Others are clear, cutting through the layers of trees. Each call tells the jungle, and you, where something exists without showing its form. A bird perches high unseen, and yet you sense its presence through sound alone. You realize that in this world, sight is only one sense. Space can be understood through listening, through feeling, through following patterns that the eye cannot see. Even water contributes to this map. Tiny streams gurgle through hidden paths. Waterfalls splash far above, and the echoes carry through the trees. You notice how each sound is absorbed or reflected depending on what it strikes. A stone, a leaf, a hollow branch, every surface shapes the sound differently. The jungle is teaching you to measure distance not by sight, but by listening, by sensing the space around you with every footstep and every breath. Your own movement becomes part of the pattern. Each step you take causes a tiny echo in the soil. Leaves crunch beneath your weight. Roots tap against your shoes. Even these small sounds feed back into your understanding of the world. You are learning a silent language, one that requires attention, patience, and subtlety. You notice the tiny gaps between sounds and realize that they, too, carry information. The jungle is alive and it is teaching you to navigate without boundaries. Sometimes a soft rustle behind a tree startles you. You pause. Nothing appears, yet your body already knows where the movement came from. You sense its location before your mind even catches up. The jungle trains awareness like this. It uses rhythm, frequency, and echo as a map that exists in sound, and your body absorbs it naturally. Every step forward sharpens this invisible connection, and you feel less like a visitor and more like a part of the system. You hear a faint chirping near a vine-covered trunk. It repeats in a steady rhythm. The pattern is almost hypnotic. You realize that this is not random noise. It marks a boundary, a space occupied by small creatures, invisible to your eyes. The jungle layers these sounds, building a network of information that humans usually overlook. You become aware of how much you are sensing without thinking. The body maps space automatically here. Your mind might lag, but your awareness is tuned to the subtle signs. Even the silence teaches you. Between bird calls, insect taps, and falling water, there are pauses that seem empty, but they are full of information. You notice the echo of your own footsteps, how they rebound off trunks and roots. The jungle uses absence as much as presence to guide movement. You learn to feel for gaps, to understand that the places where sound is missing are just as meaningful as the places it exists. The air is alive with a map that has no lines, no borders, only hints and patterns. You bend low to listen closer to a small stream running over stones. Its burble seems random, but you notice subtle variations in volume and pitch as the water moves over different surfaces. The sound tells you about the terrain, the incline, the obstacles hidden beneath leaves. You feel a strange thrill realizing that you no longer need to see every step. Your senses are adjusting. Your body and mind are learning to navigate using rhythm, echo, and vibration instead of sight alone. Sometimes, multiple layers of sound overlap. Bird calls, insect taps, wind brushing through leaves, and distant water. It could feel overwhelming, yet it becomes a kind of code. You begin to separate the layers naturally, understanding which sounds belong to what and what they indicate. The jungle speaks in a language of frequency and timing. Your ears interpret it unconsciously, teaching you a method of orientation you never knew existed. Even your shadow and movement are part of the system. When sunlight filters through the leaves, your body creates subtle echoes and vibrations in the environment. Leaves shift as you pass, tiny branches creak under your weight. The jungle responds in invisible ways, reinforcing your understanding of space. You are learning to predict patterns before they happen, not consciously, but through sensing, listening, and feeling. You pause near a cluster of thick roots. From somewhere above, a bird calls, then an insect taps. The two sounds overlap, creating a rhythm that you can feel as much as hear. You notice how far apart they are, how the echoes bounce off tree trunks and roots. Without thinking, you adjust your steps, moving in a way that keeps you balanced and aware. The jungle becomes a partner, not a backdrop. You navigate by noticing how it reacts to your presence. Every step forward is also a lesson in patience. The jungle does not reveal everything at once. Some sounds are faint, appearing only for a moment. Others linger. You learn to move slowly, listening carefully, noticing subtle differences in tone and pitch. You realize that your body is learning to read space as the jungle reads itself. You are becoming part of its invisible network of communication, sensing things that your eyes cannot see. Even when the air is still, you notice vibration patterns. Tiny animals scuttle along roots. Water moves over rocks. Leaves rustle when a small creature climbs a branch. These faint signs create a map in your mind. You realize that the jungle teaches attention in a way you have never experienced before. It asks for quiet observation, patience, and awareness of the smallest details. The jungle does not have walls, yet space is clear. It does not have signs, yet direction exists. You feel it in your body. Each sound, each echo, each vibration helps you navigate through a place that seems endless. The patterns of life, sound, and movement are all connected. Your senses become tuned to the subtle signals that create a map without borders, without edges. By the time you pause again, you realize that your understanding has shifted. You no longer need to think about where to go. Your body has mapped the space naturally. You sense the locations of hidden roots, the distance to a small stream, the presence of a cluster of insects before you see them. The jungle has taught you to move with awareness, to read sound as easily as sight, and to trust your instincts in ways you never expected. Even in silence, even when you stop completely, the jungle continues to teach. The echoes of birds, insects, water, and wind remain. Patterns persist. Your body remembers, your ears interpret, and your mind follows without effort. You are navigating without edges, without walls, guided by the subtle rhythms of life that surround you. Each step, each breath, each pause deepens the connection. You are no longer just walking. You are part of a living map, moving with a system that has existed long before you and will continue long after you leave. The sound of water changes as you move deeper. It is no longer the rush of rivers or the sharp splash of waterfalls. Here, water feels paused. Mist hovers between the trees, thick and soft. You can see it coating leaves, clinging to branches, and forming tiny droplets that hang in the air. Even the ground seems damp in a way that is steady, deliberate, and quiet. The water waits. It does not hurry. Every drop feels held, suspended in time, as if the jungle itself is keeping it for a secret purpose. Fog rolls slowly through the canopy, slipping between tree trunks and vines. It hides paths and softens the shapes of plants and branches. You notice that even your breathing creates a small disturbance in the mist, yet it quickly closes around you again. The jungle seems to absorb movement in the water and the air. Nothing is forced. Nothing flows faster than it is ready to. You feel a strange calm, noticing that even liquid can pause and linger. The air is thick with moisture. Each breath fills your lungs with damp warmth. The jungle feels heavier, not in weight but in presence. Water is everywhere, yet it seems suspended, not moving in a way you expect. Leaves hold droplets that glisten faintly. Roots and rocks are slick but steady. Streams move slowly, tracing careful paths, barely audible beneath the mist. You feel held in place, as if the jungle and its water have slowed time for you. You notice the fog around a cluster of ferns. Tiny droplets settle on their leaves and stems. The leaves bend slightly under the weight, yet they do not break. Even the smallest plants seem designed to handle this suspended moisture. You imagine that each droplet waits before it joins another, before it touches the soil or moves into a stream. Everything in the jungle has its pace. Water has its own patience, and you are learning to match it. Small clouds of mist form between the trunks of large trees. Sunlight filters through them in thin beams, creating a shimmering haze that is almost unreal. Each tree seems outlined in its own cloud, its branches and leaves holding water like tiny magnets. You reach out to touch a droplet on a leaf, and it clings to your skin longer than you expect. The jungle teaches that even something as fleeting as water can be controlled by restraint, by waiting, by quiet presence. The ground is damp, soft under your feet and alive with moisture. You notice small rivulets seeping through the soil. They move slowly, taking the long path around roots and stones. Water does not hurry here. It spreads carefully, holding itself in place long enough for every plant to drink and every root to absorb its nutrients. You realize that movement is not always speed. Sometimes life thrives by waiting, by spreading gradually, by allowing everything to adjust before change occurs. You pause near a small pool formed beneath a fallen branch. Its surface is still, reflecting the mist above. Tiny droplets fall from the leaves, rippling gently but never violently. The water seems suspended, neither rushing downstream nor evaporating into the air. You feel a strange sense of order in this pause. The jungle is teaching patience through water. Even the smallest drop matters, even the slowest movement shapes the forest. Mist coils around vines like soft fingers, touching them lightly, sliding down their length, yet never forcing their path. You notice how it slows your perception, making distances harder to judge. The air seems thicker with every step, and yet your body moves naturally. You feel the presence of water in a way you cannot explain. It surrounds you, wraps around you, and becomes part of your experience without sound, without urgency. Every plant absorbs the water differently. Some leaves collect droplets, funneling them down to the soil. Some absorb moisture directly through their surfaces. Moss, ferns, and lichen seem designed to capture every tiny amount. Even fallen leaves hold water, releasing it slowly. You watch as water slowly glides over a root, wetting it inch by inch. You realize that the jungle is teaching you that life does not need haste. Progress is measured by absorption, not speed. You follow a tiny stream that moves barely perceptibly. Water runs around stones and fallen leaves, forming little pools that shimmer under the filtered light. It moves so slowly that you feel you could almost reach out and touch each droplet individually. The jungle slows everything here, forcing attention. Every ripple is visible, every curve of the stream important. You notice how the slow pace allows every plant and animal along the waterway to respond, to drink, and to thrive. Fog clings to tree trunks as you pass. You can see tiny droplets sliding down the bark, collecting in moss and lichen. Each drop moves slowly, deliberately, shaping its path and nourishing what it touches. Water is not chaotic here. It is restrained, precise, and careful. You feel as if the jungle teaches through this calm flow. Movement is not always about rushing. Sometimes the greatest power is in holding, in waiting, in letting the world unfold at its own pace. You notice the leaves overhead. Each droplet balances delicately, resisting gravity. A slight wind causes a small shift, and the water falls, but never in a rush. The jungle handles everything with care. Even storms, when they come, eventually pause, leaving droplets hanging from branches and leaves, suspended in quiet reflection. You feel that the jungle itself practices patience, using water as both medium and teacher. Mist surrounds a fallen log. Tiny plants grow from its damp surface. Water clings to each leaf and stem, feeding roots and fungi. You see how life depends on this suspended movement. Nothing is wasted. Each droplet nourishes slowly, reaches exactly where it is needed, and disappears only when the time is right. The jungle teaches that waiting is not weakness. It is preparation, balance, and attention. Even small animals move differently here. Frogs linger on leaves covered in mist. Insects crawl over damp bark, pausing to drink from droplets. The slow pace of water shapes their behavior. You notice how the jungle's timing guides every creature, every plant, every inch of life. Nothing rushes. Nothing is forced. Even the faintest sound is softened by mist and fog, creating a world where movement and attention are measured, deliberate, and calm. You pause and breathe in. The air is thick with moisture, soft against your skin. Every droplet, every mist-filled breath feels like it is part of the jungle entering you. You feel held, almost suspended, like everything around you is balancing perfectly. Even your own body seems slower, your movements measured. The jungle's water teaches patience in ways that sight or sound cannot. It moves slowly, waits, absorbs, and teaches you to notice. As you walk, you notice tiny rivulets forming on leaves, slowly sliding toward the ground. A drop falls from a fern, lands on a moss-covered stone, and merges with other droplets. You follow it with your eyes, and it seems to move with intention, not rush. The jungle rewards careful observation. Everything that happens here is small, deliberate, and interconnected. You understand that life can exist in pause, in waiting, in careful, suspended balance. Everywhere you look, water seems to float between presence and movement. Fog, mist, droplets, and seepage all exist in a quiet state of suspension. It softens the world. It slows your thoughts. It teaches the rhythm of patience. The jungle shows that movement does not have to be immediate to be meaningful. Even waiting becomes a form of action, slow but necessary, shaping the forest quietly, invisibly, and completely. The jungle teaches patience in ways you cannot see at first. You notice it in the quiet spaces between movement, the pauses that stretch longer than expected. Animals do not rush. They appear only when necessary. A small lizard freezes completely on a branch, blending perfectly with the moss. Its body seems almost part of the tree. You realize it does not move without reason. Every motion is calculated, measured, and precise. Nothing acts too soon. Nothing wastes energy. Birds sit silently on branches. Their heads turn slowly, scanning, listening, calculating. Even when they fly, it is not haphazard. Each beat of their wings is deliberate, efficient. The jungle does not encourage waste. Every creature conserves strength, stores energy, and waits for the exact moment it needs to act. You feel the stillness pressing gently around you, teaching in a language of patience and restraint. In the undergrowth, insects crawl quietly. Some carry food, others move to new locations, but all actions are synchronized with the needs of the jungle. None move too fast, none too slow. It is a rhythm you cannot hear, but you can feel it. It is almost like a heartbeat beneath the leaves, constant and subtle. You notice your own steps echo differently in this stillness. Each footfall is a sound that the jungle absorbs, yet your presence is acknowledged in a quiet way. Predators are even more cautious. You hear the faint rustle of a jaguar moving through thick underbrush far above you. It does not rush. It steps softly, calculating every movement. Its muscles tense and relax with perfect timing. You notice how much energy it saves by waiting, how much more effective it is because it does not act before it needs to. You understand that stillness is not inactivity. It is efficiency, a skill honed over centuries, and the jungle teaches it silently. Small animals also practice this efficiency. A family of monkeys pauses in the canopy, watching a distant branch sway. They do not jump immediately. They wait, measuring distance, weight, and strength. Each leap is precise. Each movement is necessary. Nothing is wasted. You see it in the way vines bend slightly under their weight before springing back. The jungle itself supports their efficiency, and you feel the calm that comes from observing this careful balance. Even the smallest creatures show synchronized stillness. Tiny frogs cling to wet leaves, barely moving, waiting for insects to approach. Spiders remain on their webs, still as the air moves around them. Every part of their body is ready to react instantly, yet nothing acts without need. You begin to notice a pattern. The jungle functions because every living thing conserves energy, waiting for the right moment. The forest itself seems to breathe with this efficiency, slowing everything just enough to let life act with perfect timing. You pause near a moss-covered log. A small rodent scurries along the edge. Its movements are careful, deliberate. It pauses, listens, and then continues. You realize that every creature is part of a larger rhythm. The jungle rewards stillness and punishes unnecessary action. Even the smallest waste of strength could mean danger. Survival depends on precision, not hurry. The forest has existed for millennia because it values action that matters, nothing more. Sunlight flickers through the leaves, creating patterns on the ground. You notice how animals use this light. A chameleon changes its color slowly, matching the shadows. It does not act too quickly. Its efficiency comes from patience. You feel a sense of calm observing this. The jungle's stillness is not empty. It is filled with purpose, intention, and careful energy. You realize that life here is not chaotic. It is slow, deliberate, and synchronized in ways that humans rarely see. Even the plants reflect this rhythm. Leaves grow in precise angles. Roots expand only as much as they need to. Vines climb without wasting strength. Growth itself is measured, not frantic. The jungle teaches through these quiet lessons. You feel the same calm in yourself as you watch, as if your body is learning the art of conserving energy, of moving only when necessary, of acting with intention. You notice a small stream. Water moves slowly, spilling over stones. It does not rush. It pauses in tiny pools, waiting before flowing onward. This water reflects the same lesson as the animals. Movement is measured, energy is conserved, and everything acts only when it must. You follow the stream with your eyes and realize that the jungle is teaching patience in every detail. Every creature, every plant, every drop of water participates in a rhythm of efficiency. A butterfly floats silently in a patch of sunlight. Its wings beat slowly, deliberately. You notice it does not rush to escape your presence. Its movements are calculated, balanced with the environment. Even creatures as light and fleeting as butterflies adhere to the same principle. Every life form in the jungle operates on the idea that stillness is powerful. Waiting is not passive. It is a form of intelligence that ensures survival. You take a slow breath and feel the rhythm of the jungle around you. Insects, birds, mammals, even the tiniest fungi and moss, they all participate in this synchronized stillness. There is no wasted energy. There is no excess action. Every movement matters. You feel a strange sense of belonging, as if your own body is beginning to mirror this rhythm. You step lightly, pause intentionally, and move only when necessary. The jungle has taught you without a word, without sound. Even when the wind blows, the jungle remains patient. Leaves sway, branches bend, but animals wait, crouch, and adjust. Nothing moves unnecessarily. You see a jaguar pause on a branch above, waiting for the right moment to continue. A small frog stretches its legs slowly, ready to leap, but only when needed. Every motion is deliberate. You feel that the jungle itself values precision over haste, timing over force. You notice that your heartbeat slows, matching this rhythm. Even decay in the jungle obeys this principle. Fallen branches do not rot all at once. Fungi and insects break them down carefully, step by step. Energy is not wasted. Nutrients are released slowly, absorbed gradually by roots and soil. The jungle maintains balance through careful, synchronized action. You begin to understand that stillness is more than quiet. It is preparation, efficiency, and harmony. You pause in a sunbeam and observe a snake coiled around a tree. Its body does not twitch unnecessarily. It waits, senses, and reacts only when a target comes close. Energy is stored in every coil. You feel a calm watching this. The jungle has been teaching this lesson for centuries. Nothing here moves without reason. Nothing acts too soon. Every life form has learned that conservation and precision are more powerful than haste. Even the rain follows this principle. Droplets fall softly, hitting leaves in a steady rhythm. They do not rush the soil. They soak slowly, giving every root and plant a chance to absorb. The jungle does not need chaos. It thrives on synchronized stillness, on action that matters, on energy preserved for the moment it is truly required. You notice how this rhythm shapes every living thing, including yourself. As you continue walking, you notice your own movements change. You step lightly, pause often, and feel a deeper awareness of your energy. You notice the small details around you. Every rustle, every sound, every movement of water or leaf matters. Nothing in the jungle wastes strength, and you are slowly learning to do the same. You feel calm, focused, and present. The jungle has taught you efficiency without effort, precision without instruction, stillness without silence. Even when sunlight shifts, even when wind moves a branch, the jungle continues its rhythm. Animals appear only when necessary. Motion is exact. Energy is never wasted. You feel this lesson deep in your body. Each breath matches the slow pulse of the forest. Each step mirrors the calculated movements of creatures around you. The jungle does not hurry. It does not demand. It exists, and everything within it moves with purpose. You feel part of this balance, connected to every quiet, precise action. The ground beneath your feet seems quiet at first, but it is anything but still. Beneath layers of leaves, fallen branches, and roots, life is busy in ways you cannot see. Microbes, tiny insects, and fungi work constantly, breaking down material that appears dead. You realize that the jungle transforms everything, but it does so quietly without noise or urgency. Decay is not dramatic here. It simply happens, unnoticed by most observers. A leaf falls from a branch above. It lands on the soil, still green but already beginning to change. Tiny fungi thread across its surface, starting the slow process of breakdown. Microbes move in, consuming the smallest particles, generating heat and releasing nutrients. You notice that this transformation is neither fast nor slow. It exists in a time you cannot measure, a rhythm hidden beneath the forest floor. The jungle does not announce change. It allows it to occur naturally, without ceremony or attention. Even larger pieces of wood are absorbed in the same way. A fallen branch may seem solid, permanent, but over time it softens, cracks, and becomes home to countless creatures. Fungi weave through it, insects burrow, moisture softens the fibers, and eventually it blends into the soil. Nothing stays long enough to gather meaning. You notice that the jungle is not sentimental. It does not preserve, mourn, or celebrate. It simply transforms patiently, continuously, without urgency. You step carefully over a patch of decaying leaves. Each one seems alive in its decomposition. Tiny spores hover above them. You see small insects crawling over the surface, breaking it apart. You can almost feel the heat generated by the microbial activity beneath your feet. The ground hums with energy, a quiet, invisible force that constantly reshapes the jungle. Every step reminds you that life and death are intertwined here, that nothing remains in one state for long. Even soil formation is part of this quiet transformation. Fallen leaves, decomposed wood, and animal waste slowly mix into the earth. Nutrients are released, absorbed by roots, and carried through mycorrhizal networks. You feel the rhythm of change in your bones, in the air around you, in the soft squish of soil beneath your feet. The jungle teaches that transformation is neither urgent nor noticeable. It is neutral. It does not demand attention, but it never stops. A small mushroom sprouts from the decayed remains of a log. It is bright, delicate, and fleeting. Within days, it releases spores into the air, disappears, and leaves the nutrients behind. You realize that even life itself follows this pattern. Birth and death, growth and decay, all happen quietly, efficiently, and without drama. The jungle has no need for spectacle. Change occurs in layers, unnoticed by most, yet essential for survival. You notice tiny insects carrying fragments of decayed leaves to new locations. They do not hurry. They move carefully, transporting nutrients as if the weight is sacred. Every movement, every action contributes to the transformation. The jungle does not force progress. It allows decay to happen naturally in its own rhythm. You feel a strange calm witnessing this quiet efficiency, understanding that nothing here holds on too long, nothing accumulates meaning beyond its moment. Even water contributes to this process. Rain falls, softening soil and leaves. Moisture encourages fungal growth, supports microbial activity, and accelerates breakdown in ways you cannot see. Every drop plays a role in transformation, yet none acts with urgency. The jungle does not need haste. It simply allows life and decay to continue together. You watch as droplets cling to leaves, then slide slowly into the soil, nourishing the ground that continually changes beneath your feet. You bend down to observe a small patch of moss growing on a decaying branch. It looks calm and still, but you realize it is part of a larger process. The branch below it slowly softens, fungi weave through it, and insects move in and out. Life exists on top while transformation works quietly below. You feel the lesson the jungle offers. Change is constant, neutral, and necessary. There is no rush, no celebration, no finality. It is simply part of existence. You notice patterns in decomposition. Leaves that fell in one area break down faster than others, depending on moisture, sun, and microbial density. Even small variations create subtle effects, guiding growth and reshaping the soil. You feel connected to this system, even though you cannot control it. The jungle teaches that everything has its pace, its method, and its role. Transformation is not dramatic. It is steady, continuous, and invisible to anyone not paying attention. A fallen flower lies among leaves. Its colors fade gradually. Microbes feed on its petals. Tiny ants carry fragments away. You realize that beauty in the jungle is temporary. Nothing stays long enough to be captured, preserved, or named. Everything serves a purpose and then disappears. You feel a quiet awe at the efficiency and neutrality of this system. The jungle transforms, erases, and renews without hurry, without notice, without drama. Even when you think the forest is silent, it is not. The soft sounds of decay, the movement of insects, the rustle of tiny creatures in the soil, all of it creates a rhythm of change. You sense that transformation is everywhere, constant, and unremarkable in its own way. The jungle is patient, absorbing everything, breaking down everything, and yet never hurrying, never pausing longer than necessary. You feel part of this cycle simply by being present. You step onto soft, wet soil. Every step compresses layers of life, some visible, some not. You feel the warmth of microbial activity, the subtle heat of decay beneath your feet. The jungle does not need drama to function. Life, death, and transformation are continuous and quiet. Nothing remains long enough to hold meaning. Every fallen leaf, every branch, every flower contributes to the system, disappears, and nourishes the next generation of growth. You notice small roots pushing through decayed material. They are delicate, yet unstoppable. Even as they grow, they follow the rhythm of the jungle, absorbing nutrients only as they are available, expanding only as space allows. Transformation happens around them, below them, above them. You feel the weight of this endless cycle and understand that the jungle is a teacher of impermanence. Nothing is permanent. Everything changes. Nothing is urgent. Even the air holds signs of transformation. Fungi release spores that float invisibly. Water evaporates slowly from leaves and soil. Tiny particles move from decay to growth, constantly reshaping the forest. You realize that transformation is not just a process. It is a presence. It fills the jungle and moves through it in ways you cannot see, yet you feel it in the soft pulse beneath your feet and in the subtle movement of life around you. As you pause and look around, you notice the stillness above the canopy. A gentle wind stirs leaves, carrying the faint scent of decay and renewal. You feel the lesson of the jungle deeply. Life moves, changes, and disappears without urgency. Transformation is neutral. It is quiet. It is constant. The jungle does not need to announce it. You realize that the calm you feel comes from observing this process, understanding that nothing remains, everything changes, and the world continues without fuss or drama. Even the sunlight seems to follow this principle. Rays penetrate the canopy, touching leaves and soil, accelerating subtle changes without demanding attention. Each patch of light warms the forest floor just enough to encourage microbial activity and growth. The jungle transforms constantly, yet never hurries. Every living thing contributes, participates, and disappears, leaving space for the next form of life to emerge. You walk slowly, aware of the quiet power beneath your feet. Every step, every breath, every observation deepens your understanding. Transformation is all around, yet nothing feels rushed. The jungle teaches neutrality, patience, and continuous renewal. You feel part of this process, witnessing how decay and life coexist, how nothing remains too long, and how change itself is the constant heartbeat of the forest. As you walk deeper, time starts to feel different. The jungle does not follow the clock. Sunlight filters through the canopy, but it changes so slowly that you cannot tell if hours have passed. Shadows stretch, shrink, and shift, but they do not mark strict beginnings or endings. Days lose their usual structure. You realize that here, time is not measured by schedules, by minutes, or by the rising and setting of the sun. Time becomes a feeling. The air is thick and warm. You breathe in slowly, noticing how your body adjusts without you thinking. Your heartbeat, your breath, even your steps seem to follow a rhythm set by the forest itself. You are aware that you are changing, becoming part of a cycle that is older than any human schedule. Hormones in your body respond to the soft light, the moisture, the slow movements around you. You feel awake, yet calm. Your body knows more than your mind. Even the birds and insects do not adhere to the rules you know. Some call when you expect silence. Others remain quiet when you anticipate sound. Life continues, yet it is not bound by the hours you are used to. The jungle has its own timing, an internal clock that is invisible yet precise. You notice patterns emerging, subtle pulses that guide everything from insect movement to water flow. Time feels layered, continuous, and personal. Water moves slowly over rocks, filling pools and crevices. Its rhythm is soft and unhurried. You watch it for a long moment, and it seems to pulse with a slow, deliberate beat. The jungle around you has its own cycles, some lasting days, some hours, and some only seconds. Each moment overlaps the next. You feel your mind slow, catching up to this natural pace. The sensation is strange and mesmerizing. Even the wind has no fixed schedule. Gentle breezes move through the leaves, sometimes lasting minutes, sometimes seconds. It bends branches, rustles leaves, and lifts small particles into the air. You notice that the jungle responds instantly, yet in its own way. You begin to sense that time here is measured not by numbers but by change, by rhythm, by subtle shifts that the mind notices only if it pays attention. Sunlight reaches through gaps in the canopy, illuminating patches of moss and fern. You pause to watch tiny insects moving across the leaf surfaces. They do not rush. Their steps follow an internal rhythm, coordinated with the world around them. You realize that everything in the jungle has its own timing. Nothing moves too early, nothing waits unnecessarily. Life flows naturally, aligned with cycles you cannot name, yet your body recognizes them. You hear the distant calls of a bird. It is neither morning nor evening, yet the sound fits perfectly with the other movements in the forest. Your senses respond before your mind can interpret. Your ears pick up patterns, your eyes adjust to shifting shadows, and your body aligns with the rhythm of life around you. Time is no longer external. It is internal. It pulses in your chest, resonates in your limbs, and whispers through every breath. Even decay follows this subtle rhythm. Fallen leaves and branches are absorbed at a pace that feels neither fast nor slow. Microbes, fungi, and small insects work in harmony with the cycles of moisture, temperature, and sunlight. You notice the heat beneath your feet, the soft sound of decomposition. Everything has a schedule of its own, one that exists independently of clocks or calendars. You feel strangely at peace, realizing that your body, too, is part of this hidden timing. The canopy above changes constantly. Sunlight moves across leaves, shadows fall in new patterns, and the air grows heavier in some areas, lighter in others. You cannot tell how long you have been walking. Minutes or hours feel the same. The jungle does not announce transitions. You sense them instead. A shift in the wind, a change in light, a subtle sound in the undergrowth all mark movement through time. You feel the pulse and start to follow it naturally. Animals move without schedules. A jaguar pauses high in the trees, waiting, observing, then moves in silence. A frog jumps when it needs to, not because a clock says so. Even plants respond to time differently here. Leaves tilt slowly, flowers open gradually, and vines creep upward with patience. Everything is synchronized to an internal rhythm you cannot see but can feel. You realize that time is not linear here. It is layered, flexible, and alive. You step carefully over roots and stones, noticing how your body aligns with the soft vibrations beneath your feet. Every movement matches the subtle pulses of life around you. Even when nothing seems to happen, time flows. Water flows, leaves bend, animals sense your presence. Your senses sharpen, your body becomes aware of this invisible schedule, and you feel part of it. The jungle is teaching you to sense time differently, to live by rhythm rather than measurement. Sunlight shifts again, highlighting a cluster of moss. A small insect walks across it in perfect timing with a falling droplet of water. You watch and feel a strange fascination. Everything seems intentional yet effortless. You sense that the jungle has existed for centuries without a single clock. Life here follows its own pulse, a rhythm that humans rarely notice, and yet it shapes every step, every breath, every movement. You pause near a hidden pool. The surface reflects branches above, slightly rippled by wind and falling droplets. Time here does not feel like it moves in a straight line. Moments overlap, merge, and repeat. The jungle flows around you, inside you, and through you. You realize that your awareness of time is changing. You feel relaxed, synchronized with the slow, internal pulse of life. It is a rhythm older and deeper than any watch or schedule. Even when you try to think about hours or minutes, the concepts feel distant. The jungle ignores them. It does not measure success by speed, nor does it mark change with ceremony. Each living thing adapts to its own cycles. You notice birds, insects, and mammals all responding to these hidden cues. You sense the invisible currents of time and feel the jungle shaping your body before your mind has understood it. Small sounds seem to stretch in duration. A branch creaks slowly, a frog calls softly, a leaf falls and lands with barely a sound. You realize that even subtle changes carry information about timing. Your mind relaxes, letting go of the need to measure. You feel your body's natural rhythms adjusting, syncing with the quiet pulse of the forest. Time becomes something you sense, rather than track. You notice shadows stretching across the ground. The canopy changes, sunlight filters differently, and the mist in the distance thickens and thins. Each shift is imperceptible at first, but you sense it immediately. Time here is made of these small movements, small moments and subtle changes. You realize that the jungle teaches you to experience time as a continuous flow, measured by awareness and alignment, not clocks or calendars. Even the air feels alive with this hidden rhythm. Moisture moves slowly between leaves, temperature shifts gradually, and insects follow patterns you cannot name. Your body senses these shifts, responding before your mind can fully process them. You feel connected, part of a cycle older than you, deeper than observation, and alive in every breath. You walk slowly, noticing the pulse of life around you. Birds, insects, water, leaves, soil, all follow rhythms you cannot name. You feel your heartbeat slow, your steps adjust, your breathing becomes natural. Time is no longer external. It is internal, a feeling that guides your body, shapes your perception, and connects you to the jungle in a way you have never experienced before. By the time you pause beneath a large tree, you realize that you have lost track of minutes, hours, or any strict measure. You feel the jungle's rhythm in your chest, in your feet, in every breath. You are no longer following a schedule. You are following life itself, guided by internal pulses, subtle cycles, and the quiet continuity of nature. Time has become a feeling, and you are part of it. Night settles over the jungle, and with it comes a quiet darkness that feels alive. Shapes blur, shadows blend. You can no longer trust your eyes to measure distance or depth. Trees merge into one another, vines hang like soft curtains, and paths you thought you knew seem to vanish. The forest transforms, not by movement but by perception. Space becomes uncertain. You feel your senses stretching to adapt. Temperature shifts guide your steps. Warm air rises from damp soil and cool air settles in pockets. You notice subtle changes on your skin as you move. The jungle communicates in heat and coolness rather than sight. You sense spaces, passages, and hidden gaps through subtle differences. Your body begins to respond naturally, adjusting to layers of air that are invisible but tangible. You start to understand the forest through feeling rather than sight. Even sounds change at night. Insects chirp softly, distant animals call, and water trickles quietly in places you cannot see. Each noise becomes a marker, a subtle signal of depth and distance. Your ears sharpen. Your attention stretches in every direction. You realize that when clarity disappears, perception grows. The jungle teaches you to rely on senses you rarely use, to navigate without certainty, and to trust instincts shaped by experience. The canopy above forms a thick ceiling. Moonlight penetrates in thin, scattered beams. Shadows move slowly with the leaves. Shapes become ambiguous. A fallen branch may appear as a hidden path. A cluster of leaves may hide small animals. Every step is measured. Every movement is cautious. You feel the soft uncertainty of space pressing against you. The jungle is teaching you that even when visibility fails, life continues. You simply learn to sense it differently. You notice that the air itself holds secrets. Mist gathers in pockets, hanging in layers you can almost touch. Each layer of air has a different temperature and density, and your body adjusts subtly as you walk through them. The jungle becomes three-dimensional in a new way. Depth is not seen, it is felt. Distance is not measured in meters. It is sensed through touch, smell, and temperature. You start to move with awareness that comes before thought. Animals move differently at night. You hear their movements rather than see them. A frog leaps somewhere to your right. A bird calls softly overhead. Small mammals rustle in the underbrush. Each motion is precise, purposeful, yet almost invisible. You feel that the jungle itself encourages subtlety when certainty is gone. You notice that life does not pause. It simply adapts. You begin to adapt too, letting your own perception soften and widen. Even the ground below changes. Uneven roots and rocks are hidden under shadows and mist. Your feet learn to sense texture, slope, and softness without needing to see. Every step becomes a lesson in careful observation. You start to feel layers beneath the surface. Moist soil, damp leaves, hidden puddles. They all give feedback in ways your body understands but your mind cannot name. The jungle teaches you space is more than vision. You pause near a small clearing. The moon filters through the trees, creating a pale patch of light. Shapes shift as the leaves sway. You notice the jungle seems alive in multiple dimensions at once. Depth is unclear, yet movement is present everywhere. You realize you can sense animals, branches, and terrain without fully seeing them. The forest itself seems to expand and contract based on awareness, not measurement. Space becomes flexible, yet alive. Even wind behaves differently. Gentle currents slip between trunks and leaves. Warm air rises from the soil while cool pockets settle in hollows. These shifts guide your movement. You notice subtle differences in your skin and in the sound of leaves. The jungle communicates through temperature, vibration, and humidity. Your body listens before your mind does. You sense passages, hidden obstacles, and subtle changes in space without clarity, without certainty. A stream you thought you knew appears unfamiliar in the dark. Shadows obscure its edges. Small ripples make sounds that are hard to locate. You notice how the water carries tiny vibrations. Your feet adjust instinctively as you step over roots and stones. The jungle is teaching you a new kind of navigation, one that does not rely on sight or known paths. You begin to trust feeling, intuition, and subtle cues from every sense. Even the trees themselves seem altered. Their shapes merge into one another. Branches twist in unusual ways. Moss and lichen catch the pale light differently. You feel the texture of bark through fingertips and the tips of leaves brushing against your arm. Space is no longer measured by distance. It is measured by presence. Every tree, vine, and patch of mist communicates volume and weight without being clear. The jungle becomes a map you sense, not see. Small creatures reveal themselves only when necessary. Insects move across leaves, their steps quiet but meaningful. Frogs leap, birds call, and animals rustle, all signaling their position subtly. The jungle uses these sounds to build a map of movement and location. You sense it as much as you hear it. Each sound gives information about space, depth, and distance that your eyes cannot provide. You feel the forest constructing itself around you in ways that logic cannot follow. Even the moonlight plays tricks. Light and shadow shift as clouds pass. Objects appear closer or farther away than they are. You sense the forest in layers, each one slightly offset from the next. Depth becomes a soft perception, not a fact. Distance is measured through multiple cues: temperature, sound, humidity, and movement. You begin to understand that certainty is an illusion in the jungle. The forest teaches adaptation through perception. You notice how the air smells differently in patches. Moist areas release earthy scents, cooler areas smell faintly of moss, warmer pockets carry the faint odor of soil. Each smell gives clues about hidden spaces. You learn to sense where animals might be, where water lies, where roots and stones are. Space becomes a network of impressions, layered and subtle. Your mind relaxes into these cues, feeling them rather than thinking about them. The jungle at night is alive in quiet, unpredictable ways. Small rustles, tiny movements, faint smells, shifting temperatures, they all create a map you can sense. You realize that sight is only one part of perception. The forest teaches patience, awareness, and presence. Space is no longer clear, and yet you navigate naturally. You feel connected, your senses alive to the hidden structures of the jungle. Even when you stop moving, space continues around you. Shadows bend slightly as leaves sway. Mist shifts slowly. Air flows in subtle currents. You sense volume, distance, and density without seeing a single clear line. The forest communicates through hidden signals. You notice how your body responds instinctively. You are no longer measuring space. You are feeling it. You are sensing it. You are part of it. The ground beneath your feet is soft and uncertain. Roots and stones lie hidden under leaves and mist. You step slowly, guided by touch and temperature. Small changes in air and ground tell you where to move. Distance is something you feel, not see. Depth is a sense, not a measurement. You realize that the jungle itself has created this method. Night forces perception to expand beyond vision. You become attuned to subtle hidden cues. You pause and close your eyes. Even without sight, you can sense movement around you. The air, the trees, the mist, the animals, they all create a rhythm. Space is uncertain yet full of information. You notice every change, every vibration, every scent. The jungle teaches you that clarity is not necessary to navigate, that uncertainty can sharpen perception, and that life thrives in layers unseen. Even when you open your eyes, the shapes remain unclear. Trees, leaves, branches, and mist merge together. Shadows change with the slightest motion. Depth is soft, space is fluid. And yet you feel perfectly aligned, aware, and guided. You realize that night transforms the forest into a living, breathing system of hidden signals, and you are part of it simply by moving, sensing, and paying attention. You notice it slowly, almost as if the jungle itself is breathing. Places that were disturbed hours ago are beginning to disappear. A path you walked earlier seems softer now, less defined. Leaves, twigs, and small plants cover the marks your feet made. Human traces vanish quickly here. You realize that the forest does not remember you, and yet it absorbs your presence effortlessly. A fallen branch that blocked a small trail hours ago is now gone. You look around and wonder if it was ever there. Moss and new leaves creep into spaces that seemed empty. The forest corrects itself without effort. Paths close naturally. Clearings shrink. Even small disturbances in the undergrowth disappear as if they were never made. You begin to feel that ownership, presence, or interference does not last here. The jungle has no memory for humans. You kneel to touch the soil. It is soft, rich, and alive. Every step you take, every mark you leave is temporary. Roots grow through footprints. Tiny plants push through cracks in the soil, slowly erasing your tracks. The forest does not punish you. It does not hold grudges. It simply restores balance. You feel a strange calm in this truth, a humbling sense that your presence matters less than the endless cycle of correction. Even clearings left by fallen trees are slowly consumed. Vines twist upward, moss spreads across open soil, and saplings appear in spaces you thought were empty. You notice that the jungle is constantly reorganizing itself, filling voids, and returning to a state you cannot define. Nothing here is permanent. You realize that the forest is not shaped by you but by its own internal rhythm, constantly correcting, constantly reclaiming. Water contributes to this quiet restoration. Rain softens soil, washes away small marks, and encourages growth. Pools of water are slowly absorbed by roots in the ground. Small channels form naturally, redirecting flow. The forest uses every disturbance to renew itself. You sense that even when you think you have left an impact, the jungle has already begun erasing it. Human presence is brief. Nature is patient and unyielding. You notice that fallen leaves and branches serve the same purpose. They cover bare patches, create layers of nutrients, and hide paths. Moss grows over the tiniest indentations, filling them slowly. The forest does not rush, but nothing is permanent. Even footprints fade within hours or days, depending on moisture and growth. You feel the truth of ownership dissolving here. What you leave behind is not lost. It is absorbed, transformed, and returned to the jungle itself. A small animal scurries through a patch you had cleared. It moves carefully, making use of fallen leaves and sticks you may have disturbed. The jungle allows life to continue without pause, even when humans interfere. Your actions, your movements, your presence, none of it interrupts the rhythm for long. Everything is absorbed and corrected, naturally and efficiently. You feel the humility of being part of a system that does not notice ownership. Even large trees correct themselves. Branches broken by storms eventually fall, decay, and nourish the soil. Saplings grow to fill gaps. You see that the jungle does not hold a record of what existed before. There is no memory of loss, no sense of grievance, no attachment to what is gone. Correction is natural, automatic, and invisible. You begin to understand the depth of this process, how the forest heals itself continuously. Paths you walked earlier now look completely new. Leaves cover indentations. Small plants grow in lines where your feet pressed. The jungle does not hurry. It does not compete with you. It simply restores itself in its own time. You notice how effortless it seems. Life continues, gaps are filled, and spaces you thought were permanent are transformed. There is no sense of ownership here. Everything belongs to the jungle alone. Even disturbances in water flow are corrected. Tiny channels blocked by debris open slowly. Water finds new ways to reach roots, and pools restore themselves naturally. You notice that the forest does not resist you. It absorbs, corrects, and renews. Nothing you do lasts in the way you expect. You feel your presence fading, your interference absorbed into a system far older and more resilient than your awareness. You pause and touch a moss-covered branch. It feels soft and wet. Small scratches you made earlier have disappeared. The branch seems untouched by your hands. You sense that the jungle is patient, allowing correction without urgency. Even minor changes are restored in their own time. You feel humbled by this process. Nature does not record, judge, or hold memory. It simply persists, and all disturbances are absorbed. Even light and shadow participate in this correction. Sunlight falls differently through the canopy as new leaves emerge. Gaps close naturally. You notice how the forest reclaims space, how shadows adjust with growth, how everything aligns without guidance. Ownership dissolves because the jungle's process is beyond human interference. Nothing you mark remains. The forest heals itself quietly, endlessly, without ceremony. Small creatures play their part. Insects, worms, and tiny mammals move through spaces you disrupted. Their movements redistribute soil, carry seeds, and smooth surfaces. Even a fallen leaf becomes part of the correction process. You realize that the forest has no need for memory. It does not resent you, it does not celebrate your presence. It absorbs every act, every step, and every trace into its own rhythm. You notice a clearing you thought was permanent. Within days, small shrubs grow, saplings rise, and moss spreads across bare soil. Even when humans think they are shaping the forest, it quietly corrects itself. Your sense of ownership dissolves with every step, every observation, every breath. You begin to feel part of something larger, something that operates without notice or memory, and yet is endlessly precise and resilient. Even fallen fruits, discarded by animals or humans, are absorbed into the system. They decay, feed insects, and nourish soil. You notice that nothing remains untouched for long. Every gap, every mark, every interruption is corrected naturally. You feel the forest's patience, its power, and its ability to reclaim without attention. Ownership is an illusion. The jungle only remembers the balance it must maintain. You pause beside a fallen tree. Its hollow interior, once exposed, now slowly filled by leaves, small plants, and creeping vines. You notice how quickly nature reclaims what you thought was empty. Even the largest interruptions fade. You feel the lesson. Control, ownership, and permanence are fleeting here. The forest exists beyond human perception. It absorbs all interference and restores continuity without effort or judgment. Small sounds remind you of the process. Insects move through decaying leaves, birds hop along branches, water trickles in hidden channels. Every motion, every sound contributes to correction. Even when humans pass through, the jungle continues. Paths close, clearings fill, fallen branches disappear. You notice that the forest heals itself constantly, without acknowledgement, without drama. Even your presence fades naturally. You walk slowly, feeling how the jungle reshapes itself around you. Soil softens footprints. Leaves cover tracks. Light shifts through the canopy, highlighting new growth. Everything you leave behind is absorbed. Ownership dissolves. You begin to understand that the jungle exists not for you, not for memory, not for permanence. It exists for itself. By the time you stop, the forest seems unchanged, yet everything has moved, grown, and corrected. You notice the subtle balance of life, how disturbances vanish, and how continuity is maintained without attention. You feel humbled. The jungle has erased your presence. Nothing remains in a form you can recognize. Ownership is gone. Every action is absorbed, every gap filled, and the forest continues its quiet, endless process of correction. The jungle continues without pause. You notice that nothing marks a beginning or an end. Trees grow slowly. Leaves form and fall in rhythms you cannot measure. Branches stretch, twist, and fade back into shadow. Life moves here without observers, without records, without names. You realize that meaning is optional. Nature continues, regardless of attention or understanding. A single leaf slowly opens above your head. You watch its veins form, delicate lines branching toward the edges. Its color deepens as sunlight filters through the canopy. Tiny cells divide silently within, carrying on work you cannot see. Nothing announces this process. Nothing records it, it simply happens. The jungle does not need an audience. Its story is ongoing, quiet, and independent. Even soil beneath your feet is alive with motion. Roots expand in all directions, stretching through rich layers of nutrients, moisture, and decayed material. They push through tiny obstacles, adjust to changes in pressure, and respond to moisture you cannot perceive. Growth is constant, slow, and invisible to most eyes. You feel a calm presence in this quiet persistence, a rhythm that requires no witness. The air moves subtly. Warmth rises from patches of damp soil. Mist collects in hidden hollows. Tiny insects buzz, carrying particles, pollens, or fragments of leaves. You notice how life continues in micro steps that are easily overlooked. Nothing waits for acknowledgement. Nothing stops to be celebrated. Everything continues because existence does not require validation. A small cluster of mushrooms appears near a decaying log. They do not announce themselves. They grow slowly, quietly, and purposefully. Within days, they release spores that spread into the air. The log itself softens, decomposes further, and nourishes the surrounding soil. Even in decay, the jungle produces life. You realize that this cycle of growth and decay happens without intention or observation. It simply exists, silently and endlessly. Water follows its own path. Rain falls unevenly, creating small puddles, moist soil patches, and gentle streams that snake through roots and rocks. Moisture seeps into the ground, fueling hidden growth, carrying nutrients and encouraging life in unseen layers. The jungle does not pause for you. It continues regardless. Every drop, every ripple, every seep contributes to ongoing cycles without fanfare or purpose beyond survival. Even light participates in this quiet work. Sunbeams penetrate through tiny openings in the canopy, shifting with the day, illuminating parts of the forest floor in soft, fleeting patterns. Mosses, ferns, and seedlings respond to these brief touches of light, growing imperceptibly, dividing cells without announcing it. You notice that nothing here waits to be observed. The jungle simply continues its processes. Growth does not demand attention. Life does not ask permission. You notice a small insect moving over a decayed leaf. It is barely visible, yet its actions matter. Tiny legs push fragments aside, redistribute material, and contribute to the slow transformation of the forest floor. Life at this scale is invisible to most, yet essential. The jungle works in layers, most unseen, yet everything is connected. You realize that meaning is not required for existence. The jungle thrives quietly, without commentary or narrative. Even air currents participate in ongoing cycles. Soft breezes move spores, carry moisture, and influence the temperature of hidden pockets of soil. Tiny vibrations, unnoticed by most humans, ripple through leaves and branches. You sense that the jungle is alive in ways you cannot fully perceive. Nothing stops. Nothing waits. Every molecule, every cell, every leaf participates in the story, whether anyone is watching or not. A sapling grows quietly in a patch of sunlight. Its leaves stretch upward, its roots push downward. Every movement is gradual, deliberate, and invisible in the moment. Days pass. The sapling strengthens. Small animals brush past it, birds land nearby, and insects crawl along its stem. The jungle continues its work, reshaping the environment around it, adjusting to every action, and yet asking for no recognition. Even the fallen trees, once massive and rigid, transform into soil and nutrients. Fungi, insects, and microbes break them down, returning them to the cycle. The forest absorbs these transformations without pause or judgment. Nothing is permanent. Nothing is recorded. Life continues without insistence on meaning or acknowledgement. You feel a sense of calm understanding. The jungle does not need a story because it is a story in itself, continuous and complete without narration. The sounds of life shift subtly. Frogs croak, insects buzz, leaves rustle, and water trickles through hidden channels. Even when movement is small, its effects ripple through the forest. Every sound, every vibration, every subtle shift contributes to ongoing growth and renewal. The jungle continues without pause. Its purpose is inherent. Its story does not require observation. You are a witness, but not a necessity. You pause beneath a towering tree. Its roots anchor deep into the soil, invisible currents of nutrients and water circulating silently. Its branches stretch into the canopy, gathering light, supporting moss, fungi, and countless other organisms. The tree does not need your recognition. It grows, transforms, and sustains life because it exists, not because anyone sees it. You notice that meaning is no longer required. Existence is enough. Even the smallest patches of moss are working silently. Tiny leaves absorb moisture, grow, and decay in cycles you cannot see. Insects crawl across them, contributing to decomposition and nutrient distribution. Moisture cycles through air, soil, and plant matter, connecting life in invisible ways. Nothing waits for acknowledgement. Nothing seeks purpose beyond what it does naturally. You feel the calm of observing processes that are complete without human input. The canopy above shifts subtly with the breeze. Light filters through in random patterns. You notice shadows moving slowly, revealing hidden shapes and forms. You feel the rhythm of life here, unmeasured by clocks or observation. The jungle continues without any need for meaning. Even small changes, the growth of a leaf, the soft movement of a branch, the unseen expansion of roots, happen quietly, naturally, and without purpose beyond existence. You watch as a vine climbs along a trunk. Its growth is slow but steady. It wraps around obstacles, avoids competition when necessary, and reaches upward for sunlight. Cells divide silently, carrying on work that is unnoticed. The vine does not grow to impress or to be observed. It simply grows. You realize that the jungle itself is an endless collection of processes like this, each one continuing without necessity for meaning or validation. Even night contributes to ongoing cycles. Cool air and darkness slow some movements, accelerate others. Nocturnal creatures emerge, unseen but active. Insects, mammals, and amphibians all follow their own rhythms. The jungle operates in layers, some visible, some hidden. Meaning is unnecessary. Processes continue because life persists, because the forest exists, and because growth and decay are fundamental parts of being. You notice small changes in the soil around your feet. Tiny roots push through, seeds germinate, and moisture seeps in. Every action, every movement, every cycle contributes to the ongoing story of life, yet no one writes it down. The jungle has no need for observers. Its story exists in continuous motion, independent of attention. You feel yourself part of it, connected, yet not required. Even when you look away, the forest continues its work. Leaves grow, branches stretch, roots expand, and water circulates through hidden channels. You notice subtle patterns emerging, shifts in light and changes in temperature. Growth is continuous. Decay is constant. Life moves on, not because of meaning, not because of recognition, but simply because it must. You feel humbled by the endless, quiet persistence around you. By the time you pause and breathe, the lesson is clear. Nothing marks arrival. Nothing records departure. Growth continues unnoticed. Leaves form slowly, roots expand silently, moisture cycles invisibly, and life thrives without anyone witnessing it. The story of the jungle is not written. It is lived, moment by moment, action by action, completely independent of meaning or observer. You sense that this is the ultimate rhythm of life.